Ira Smith buried his gold on his farm and didn't tell anybody where it was. He planned on telling his wife the location before he died, but he didn't expect to get hit by lightning. In a 1960 newspaper article about the lost treasure of John Morris, his grandson said at that time that the gold was never found and that they were still looking for it. Hello and welcome to Lost Treasure Stories. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little about me, but I need to warn you. In the background, you might hear at any time ducks quacking, chickens cackling, roosters crowing, dogs barking, cats meowing, or my neighbor's loud Latin music playing. Just think of it all as natural background music. I could start my own petting zoo around here. But seriously, folks, I've been doing historical research for over 45 years now. Since the 1970s, I've specialized in stories of treasure buried and lost by farmers and ranchers. Over all those years of research, I've filed away hundreds of lost treasure stories. Oh sure, I've got all the stories that were published in the old treasure hunting books and magazines, and the stories that were all over the internet. But through research of old historical newspapers and family biographies and historical archives, I've got hundreds and hundreds of stories that haven't been heard of for 75 to 150 years. I've got stories from every state in the U.S. I've kept those stories a secret all those years. Oh sure, my partner and I have made recovery attempts on a handful of locations, but most of the locations haven't been searched in a very, very long time. But I'm in my 70s now. I think it's time to share my secret files with other people. Why would I do that? Because making these videos makes me feel like I'm out there searching for lost treasure. I'm going to spill the beans with no holding back. I'm going to give you all the facts and details that I have on each story in these videos. But before we get started, I want you to know that I don't look at this as just my YouTube channel. To me, it's your channel too. So be sure to subscribe to our channel. After all, you don't want to miss a post whenever I put a new one up, especially when it involves a story from your own state. If our channel keeps growing, I'll keep posting new videos. But there's another reason to subscribe as well. I'm planning on turning every story in these videos into a printable ebook. I'm going to make that ebook available to my subscribers only. So go ahead and subscribe now. And on to the lost treasure stories. Okay, everybody met Rocky the robot in our very first video, so you know he's my helper. For those of you who haven't watched our first video, Rocky is the one that reads all the lost treasure stories for me, because I have a hard time reading through those stories myself. So he helps me with that. Oh, look, here's Rocky now. Rocky, what are you doing with that guitar?
Don't worry about it. It's just something I've been playing around with here lately. I'm gonna go ahead and get into our first story now. The title of this article is Hunt for Treasure. It's a newspaper article from July the 4th, 1901. The family of Ira Smith, a farmer at Youngstown near this city, who was killed by lightning 3 weeks ago, are looking for buried gold. He did not believe in banks, and the family knew he had $2,600 in gold just before his death, besides $1,300 in notes and cash found on his person. Several years ago he was shot by one of his sons, and he said then it was fortunate that he did not die, for the reason that he alone knew the hiding place of his money. The family are digging at various places on the farm under the belief that he had $10,000 to $15,000 buried. Here's a follow-up article 10 days after the original article when he was first struck by lightning. When Ira Smith, a rich farmer, was instantly killed by lightning in his cornfield 10 days ago, he had not disclosed to his family the hiding place of from $12,000 to $15,000, which he was known to have in cash. The members of his family have been searching for it over the farm night and day since. He had $1,300 in cash on his person at the time he was killed. That's the end of this article, but remember, back in the day, gold was often referred to as cash, so that $12,000 to $15,000 was actually gold. And here's another follow-up article about some of his gold being found. When Ira Smith, a farmer, was killed by a bolt of lightning 2 months ago, he carried to the grave with him the secret of the hiding place of not less than $5,000 in gold. He was a peculiar man who did not tell even the members of his family about his financial affairs and was afraid of the banks. It had been known for years that he was hiding money on the farm. He often said that he would disclose the secret on his deathbed, but he did not take into account the chance of sudden death. He was at work in a field when killed. For weeks after his death, search was made for the money, but the search was finally abandoned. Saturday, a son-in-law was loading corn from an old crib into a wagon when his shovel struck something hard. It was found to be an old wagon box with rags filling the opening. These were pulled out, and following them came a stream of the yellow coins. In all, there was $1,600. The search for the remainder of the hidden wealth has been resumed.
And that concludes the lost treasure story of Ira Smith. And now we're going to go to the lost treasure story of John Morris. There's a couple other stories lumped into the same article, so let's get into the story now. Are you ready, Rocky?
I was born ready. Well, technically, I wasn't born, but you know what I mean. Let's do this. This story is from a June 14, 1960 newspaper article. The title is, "Folks Say Gold is Buried Near Elk." This newspaper article covers more than one story, so we're just gonna lump them all together here in the one article. The article goes like this: there may be gold in them thar hills. Or, for that matter, it may not be in the hills at all. But gold there is, according to those supposed to be in the know about such things, and it's buried somewhere in the newly established Elk Estates, just for the taking and digging. Advice to the gold seekers, however, no claim jumping partner. Grandsons of the late John M. Morris, one of the early settlers of the Lentzville area, say the gold, $10,000 in $5 and $20 gold pieces, is still buried somewhere in the vicinity of where the old home place stands. Harry Morris and Jewel Morris, grandsons, said they believe their grandfather buried the gold where he could keep an eye on it all the time. It is said to have been hidden in a metal box. Neither of the grandsons know where it rests. "If we did, we would have dug it up a long time ago," said Harry. Nobody living, apparently, saw where Grandpop stuffed his gold underground, although there has been much speculation on the subject for a number of years. But it's never been found. No one has been able to locate it. There is a possibility it is buried under a big cedar tree southeast of the old home house. There is also a possibility it was hid away in a hole under a big flat rock on a hill north of the house. Or it could be under the ground somewhere in the area of where the old barn once stood, west of the house. Or it could be anywhere on any of the lots now being offered for sale as Elk Estates. Some may be of the opinion that the story was circulated as a promotion gimmick to interest people into buying lots, but a check by the Courier and Democrat revealed that the story is not a new one. Former State Senator Mill Grisham and Homer McElmore, chairman of the Limestone County Board of Revenue, indicated they were fairly certain the gold had been buried somewhere on the old Morris place. Grisham's great-great-grandfather was John Henry Lentz, a Revolutionary soldier who settled in what came to be known as the Lentzville community around 1820. Grisham not only believes there is gold on the Elk Estates property, but added that there is probably some gold hidden in other parts of the county, not far from the Lentzville area. There have been plenty of stories told in Grisham's time, and he remembered a number of them. Grisham said that Green Whitfield and Andrew Twitty organized 2 Confederate companies at Elk River Mills during the war between the states. One of the soldiers who joined up was a fellow named Andrew Crenshaw, according to Grisham. Crenshaw is said to have hidden an undisclosed amount of gold in the Elk River Mills area before he left the war. Crenshaw was killed, and as far as known, the gold was never found. 2 other persons, whose names were not remembered, didn't go to the war, but stayed behind to burn and rob. This pair is also known to have buried gold somewhere near Sugar Creek. It was never found, Grisham said. Grisham said the Morris gold was buried about 1901. Lintsville used to be one of the most populous areas in the county, Grisham said. He remembered the area as one active with cotton farming and picturesque southern living. There was even a government whiskey still operated by Tom Sims and Vince Tidwell at that time, he recalled, at Hackey's Creek, now Shoemaker's Branch. Grandfather Morris is said to have paid the taxes on the whiskey and sold some of it to his neighbors. Liquor was nothing in those days, said Grisham. Nobody thought anything about taking a shot of whiskey. Many even kept it in jugs under their beds. Some preachers even took a swig before giving their sermons. Macklemore said he used to ford the river at the old Morris place when he was about 7 years old. That was about 52 years ago, Macklemore said. Macklemore said his father used to work for Mr. Morris, and he was considered at that time to be pretty wealthy. Walter Morris, a son of John M. Morris, who is now dead, told Macklemore's father that there was some money around the house somewhere. Walter said that his dad had ordered a strong box from the old Legrand hardware store in Athens in which to keep his money. He didn't use banks, said Harry. I can tell you this, said Macklemore. Somebody is going to buy a lot over there in Elk Estates for $800 or $900 and find enough money to pay for several lots. Harry and Jewel Morris remembered their grandfather as having started with nothing, not even a bed and cook stove. When he died, though, he was apparently well off.
And now it's time for our special Lost Treasure Found story that we end each episode with. You're going to be amazed at this story. I mean, these guys found a whole cistern full of old silver coins.
I'm ready, but why couldn't that have been me that found all those coins? This story comes from an article in an old magazine titled Lost Treasure that was in publication at that time. When Tony Ballou and Randy Paul pried the lid off the manhole that led to a cistern, they sure didn't expect what they found. At first, Tony found only one coin clinging to the wall inside of the hole. Then he stepped down onto the metal pipe that protruded from the wall and jumped into a cushion of coins 2.5 feet deep. Soon he was standing knee-deep in silver coins. It all started on July 11, 1985, as Herbert Paul stood painting from a ladder outside the Miller Packing Company at Kokomo, Indiana. His step-brother, Tony Ballou, was working inside as a meat wrapper. When Herbert was making his way down the ladder for a drink of water, he spotted a circular object lying in the dirt nearby. When he picked it up and rubbed the dirt off, he saw at once that it was a silver quarter. He immediately raked his hands through the dirt to see if there were any more. He found a number of coins scattered here and there, which added up to about $20 in dimes, quarters, and halves. That was enough to get his blood pumping. During lunch, he showed them to Tony. They considered the possibilities and decided to conduct a thorough search of the area. They discovered additional coins on the ground near a sort of manhole cover. They opened the lid and peered underneath. It was too dark inside the hole to see anything without a light, so they replaced the lid for the time being. The next day, Tony showed a few of the coins to Neil Miller, one of the company owners. I asked permission to search for more coins after working hours. Neil Miller told me to go ahead, and whatever I found, I could keep, Tony said to Miller. The following Sunday, Tony Ballou and his other stepbrother, Randy Paul, arrived at the meatpacking plant as planned, ready to search for more silver coins. This time they shined a light into the pit underneath the cistern cover. It was then that Tony discovered the one coin that led to his descent into the 8-foot round treasure hole. They didn't come prepared to haul away such a large treasure. The stepbrothers found themselves frantically looking around for something to load their find into. The only thing handy was an old metal bucket, and it was marred by a large hole in one side. So they balanced as many coins as possible in the bucket on the one good side and raced on home. At that point, they were too excited to think straight. They only wanted to show someone the evidence of their discovery, which amounted to scads of silver dimes, quarters, halves, and dollars, dating from 1890 to 1964. They immediately returned to the site prepared to salvage more silver. They were back in the pit when Neil and Mark Miller ordered them out of the hole at gunpoint. Tony said Mark Miller stuck a 32 or 45 right here on the left side of my head and Neil stuck at 22 here on the right side, and said to come on out of the hole. Meanwhile, Randy hid the punctured bucket of coins behind a loose board inside the cistern. Tony retrieved it later. Each of the brothers received a 13-pound share of silver worth about $5,000. The three brothers speculated that perhaps the Millers were merely patrolling the property on a normally closed day and had forgotten that Neil had given Tony Ballou permission to search for the coins there. Then they saw what the three had found and decided, on the spot, to keep it for themselves. Someone apparently called the police before the Millers saw any of the coins. By the time they arrived, the weapons had been put away. No one mentioned the treasure to the police, including Paul and Ballou, who were too confused to know what to do. The Millers merely asked the police to remove the two stepbrothers from the property, so the police told them to leave. Frustrated in their attempt to salvage the silver hoard, the three brothers decided to retain a lawyer. Don Bollinger Jr. of Kokomo believed they had a strong case and took them on as clients. Bollinger took depositions and presented them to Judge Alan Brubaker, who granted search warrants for the Millers' meatpacking company property and their homes. A crowd converged on the site, including local police, a U.S. Marshal, reporters, and other unidentified witnesses, as the lid of the cistern was removed once again and an inspection was made. This time the hole was filled with water, then after it was pumped dry, the cistern appeared to be without what the brothers claimed to have seen. Tony Ballou was given permission to enter the hole with a police officer, and on closer inspection, he spotted a single coin. Tony was then ordered out of the pit, and the police conducted a more thorough search. The police search turned up a few more coins that were possibly dropped by whoever made off with the cash. The police also found coin wrappers, a U.S. mint bag, and the rusty remains of metal boxes which may have originally contained some of the money. Court proceedings, now pending, will determine if the three brothers will profit from their discovery. According to Bollinger, Indiana law has established precedents whereby finders of treasure troves are permitted to keep their finds unless prior rightful ownership can be established. Tony and I confronted Neil Miller and tried to make some kind of settlement, Herbert Paul said. We don't want to be greedy, but we saw what was down in the hole, and we think we know who took it. So it seems only right that we should have at least a share in the find. The Millers have officially disclaimed any knowledge of the treasure. Nevertheless, the three brothers said they talked to a witness who claims to have seen the Millers loading a container that looked like a horse trough, measuring about 3 feet tall and 6 feet wide, with silver coins from the cistern. The brothers believe that the missing coins have a face value of about $75,000, which would be worth at least $300,000, even at today's scrap silver prices. The entire trove could conceivably bring $500,000 in cash. According to Bollinger, even if the Millers can establish that the now deceased previous owner, George Miller, did indeed hide the coins in the pit, the Millers still have no right to ownership. Bollinger cites as precedents a 1922 Indiana court case, which decided in favor of the one who found the catch of gold coins, even though the heir of the person who hid it was the owner of the property at the time of the find. According to Bollinger, this Indiana law is derived from an ancient British law, which governed the finding of gold and silver treasures. The Indiana law has since been changed to include paper money. In England, however, the entire law has been completely changed to hold the Crown as rightful heir to any such finds. In the state of Indiana, the original use of the law still stands and says that the finder of a treasure trove has superior claim after the original owner, who may have hidden the treasure. So apparently, if the original owner is deceased, the finder, or finders, such as the Pauls and Tony Ballou, do have lawful right to such treasure. The brothers, Herbert and Randy Paul, and stepbrother, Tony Ballou, now wait expectantly for the outcome of court proceedings. Their excitement over the discovery of all that treasure still lights their faces when they talk about it. Randy talks about getting a metal detector after settlement is made, so obviously, the treasure bug has bitten him in more ways than one. It's doubtful that he'll ever come across another pit of silver like the one he and Tony found that day in July. But even if he never does, he and his brothers will savor the memory of this one for the rest of their lives.
Okay, that concludes
Wait,
this episode.
wait, before we go, check this out.
Rocky, what are you doing? Rocky, this is not a talent show channel. I'm going to cut you off. Okay, sorry folks. Like I said, when I warned you before, Rocky gets pretty obnoxious and overbearing sometimes. So I just cut him off for you. So I really appreciate the time we had to spend together on our Lost Treasure stories. I hope you see you on the next video posted soon. Have a great day.